Hello everyone. Today's video is about how to break bad habits, told through the inspiring year-long journey of a young man named Sam. You'll follow Sam from the moment he realizes his habits are holding him back, through the struggles, small wins, and breakthroughs that completely change his life. Along the way, the story will reveal simple, practical ways anyone can overcome procrastination, unhealthy routines, and negative patterns without needing complicated strategies or perfect discipline. It's not just a guide, it's a relatable and motivational story that shows you step by step how small, consistent changes can lead to big transformations. By the end of this video, you'll see that breaking bad habits isn't about being perfect, but about patience, self-understanding, and building a life you truly want. Sam woke before the sun rose, the room still wrapped in the pale blue light of early morning. Outside, the streets were silent, as though the whole world was holding its breath. For a few moments, he lay there, listening to his own breathing. His mind wandered back to all the times he had made himself the same promise, to finally stop doing the thing that was slowly eating away at his time, energy, and focus. He had promised his mother, his friends, and most importantly, himself. Yet each time, the promise broke like a brittle twig underfoot. But something in the air felt different that morning. A small, steady spark glowed deep inside him. Quiet, but determined. It wasn't a roaring flame, but a gentle light that refused to go out. When Sam was a child, he had loved drawing more than anything. He could sit for hours on the floor with crayons and paper, creating entire cities on a single sheet. His mother used to say he had a gift for noticing the details others missed, that he could see the world as a story waiting to be told. But as he grew older, other patterns started to grow with him. They were small at first: an extra snack after dinner, a few minutes of scrolling on his phone before bed, avoiding difficult tasks with quick distractions. They didn't seem dangerous then. But over months and years, those little actions took root, quietly growing into habits that stole his focus and drained his time. The habit that troubled him the most was his constant urge to scroll through his phone whenever he felt alone or uneasy. It had started as a way to kill boredom. He'd open an app to watch something funny or interesting, and before he knew it, an hour had passed without him noticing. Deadlines slipped by. Letters he meant to write to friends went unwritten. The quiet time he once used to think, create, or dream had been swallowed up. The phone wasn't the real enemy. Sam knew that. The problem was how he reacted to feelings he didn't like. When stress, boredom, or fear crept in, the phone offered instant relief. It was quick, bright, and satisfying, like a firework in the dark. But just like fireworks, the feeling faded almost immediately, leaving him wanting the next burst. One rainy afternoon, Sam sat at his small desk. A blank page glowed on his laptop screen, the cursor blinking like a small heartbeat. He tried to write, but his mind kept drifting to his phone. He thought back to other habits he had managed to break in the past: waking early by placing his alarm clock across the room, saving money by dropping loose change into a jar every night. Those changes had been small, but they had worked. He realized that habits are like rivers. They begin as narrow streams and over time carve deep channels. If you change the path early, the river will flow differently. But if you wait until the river is wide and strong, shifting it takes much more effort. That thought gave him a quiet sense of control. This time, he would not rely on sheer willpower. He would make a plan he could live with, one that felt human and possible. Sam didn't fill his mind with complicated theories about habit change. He decided instead to simply watch himself, like a scientist observing a subject. He would pay attention to the exact moment before he reached for his phone, the tiny pull of boredom, the small knot of anxiety in his chest. When he noticed it, he wouldn't scold himself. He would simply say, in his mind, "Hello, I see you." That simple act of noticing made the urge weaker. The next day, he began keeping a small notebook. In it, he wrote down the time and the feeling he had just before picking up his phone, and how he felt afterward. His first entry read, 8:10 p.m., ORD, after, regret. The next day was the same, and the next. Patterns began to emerge, the short bursts of relief, followed by long stretches of disappointment. He decided to experiment with small steps. Instead of trying to quit entirely overnight, he made one tiny change. Whenever he felt the pull to scroll, he would first stand up and pour himself a glass of water. The act itself wasn't magical, but it gave him a moment of pause, a space to choose. Often, the urge would pass during those few seconds. On days when it didn't, he had a backup plan, stepping outside for 2 minutes and feeling the air on his face. Sam's progress was far from perfect. There were nights when he forgot to pause and slipped back into endless scrolling until past midnight. But this time, he didn't punish himself. He reminded himself that change wasn't a straight line. It was a winding path with both climbs and descents. Every small improvement counted. He began to celebrate even the smallest victories. If he put his phone away and watered a plant instead, he gave himself a quiet nod. If he played a short piece of music instead of scrolling, he noticed how his mind felt clearer. Each of these little successes felt like adding a coin to a jar that would eventually grow heavy. Sam also started changing his environment. He remembered how his mother used to swap the candy jar for a bowl of fruit in the kitchen. He realized the same principle could work for him. He moved his phone to another room before bed and replaced its spot on his desk with sketch paper and pencils. Now, instead of the phone pulling him toward distraction, the sight of the paper invited him to draw. He also began telling himself a story about the person he wanted to become, someone who woke with bright eyes, who finished small drawings each week, who wrote letters to friends, and who slept deeply without the glow of a screen. Each time he made a choice that aligned with that version of himself, he felt a quiet sense of pride. One evening, he met his friend Aisha at a cafe. Over tea, he admitted his struggle. Aisha smiled and shared her own battle, biting her nails when nervous. She told him about the smooth stone she carried in her pocket, which she would hold instead of biting. It didn't erase her nervousness, but it gave her hands something else to do. Sam left the cafe feeling lighter, reminded that everyone has their own habits and their own ways of dealing with them. Inspired, Sam began building his own set of small tools. He placed a jar of colored pencils by his favorite chair. He made a playlist of soft piano pieces to play when the urge to scroll hit. He carried 3 simple questions in his pocket. What am I feeling? What do I need? What small step can I take right now? These weren't harsh commands. They were open doors. Of course, there were setbacks. On some nights, he slipped back into his old routine. But instead of drowning in guilt, he treated each slip as information. He learned that the habit was strongest when he was tired, hungry, or stressed. So he began caring for his body more, eating on time, walking regularly, and taking short rests. He noticed that when his body felt steady, his mind followed. Slowly, the change began to show. Scrolling wasn't his automatic response anymore. Sometimes he still did it, but far less often. He was drawing again, his lines becoming more confident. His days felt less cluttered. One afternoon, he flipped through his early notebook entries and saw the progress clearly. The long list of after regret moments had thinned out. He had built a rhythm in his days and pockets of quiet where ideas could grow. Sam also began to replace the fleeting rewards of scrolling with deeper ones. When he completed a drawing, he would take a moment to appreciate it. When he went an hour without his phone, he'd reward himself with a short walk. These rewards lasted longer because they were tied to actions he was proud of. Not everyone understood. Some friends told him he was overthinking things. Others questioned why he bothered at all. But Sam learned to focus on the voices that supported him and to share his journey only with those who respected it. Months later, Sam realized the change had rippled into other parts of his life. His sleep improved, his relationships deepened, his focus grew sharper. Breaking one bad habit had given him the courage to adjust other parts of his life that no longer served him. One night during a storm, Sam sat by the window sketching the rhythm of the rain. He thought about young people trapped in their own loops of bad habits. He wanted to tell them that change didn't require perfection or enormous effort. It started with small, honest steps, a pause, a breath, a gentle choice. He compared the process to a tree growing. You can't see it grow every day, but underground the roots are spreading, and one day the tree stands taller. Sam still had tough nights when the old urge returned, but now he had tools, routines, and self-kindness. He no longer defined himself by the habit he once had. Instead, he defined himself by the small, steady actions he took each day. One spring morning, he walked to the river with his sketchbook. The city was waking slowly. He sat on a bench, drawing the water's movement. He thought about how breaking a habit was less about stopping something and more about becoming someone new. Someone who acted in ways that matched their values. He didn't promise himself perfection anymore. He promised to keep trying, to treat himself kindly when he stumbled, and to celebrate every small win. And with that promise, he walked home in the warm afternoon light, knowing that the road ahead would have twists and storms, but also knowing he now had the strength to keep moving forward.